Hello, and welcome to Scotland. I'm here in Leith picking up a 2024 Royal Enfield Himalayan from Biker B&B to ride around the west coast for the next 10 days. The first order of business is to get the heck out of the city. I just need to remember to stay on the left side of the road. The plan is to get across the Firth of Forth and then make my way toward Fort William on as many little back roads as I can, and then take an old ferry crossing to wander around the Isle of Skye for a few days. Just a few miles into my journey and I've already made a wrong turn. I mistakenly took an exit from the motorway and ended up in South Queensferry, which is home to the incredible Forth rail bridge that was opened in 1890. Can you imagine seeing this 8,000-foot-long feat of engineering in 1890? Anyway, the real problem with coming this way is I can't continue up that one-way street to get onto one of the car bridges to cross the Firth of Forth, so I'll have to figure out a different way. After staring at the map for a few minutes, I was on my way again. I've noticed that traffic circles are one of the harder things to reverse in your brain, so be extra careful around those. There are 3 bridges built in 3 different centuries crossing the water here. The rail bridge that opened in 1890, the suspension bridge that opened in 1964, and this cable stay bridge that opened in 2017. I chose to ride across the new one because I can't ride across the rail bridge, as cool as that would be, and they discovered corrosion inside the cables of the suspension bridge, which is one of the reasons they built the new bridge. Of course, they took steps to halt the corrosion, but still, I'll take the shiny new one. I got off the motorway as soon as was practical, and onto some of Scotland's great little single-lane roads. Look for roads with either a B followed by 4 numbers, or roads with no name at all. I should mention at this point that Scotland doesn't really have any legal off-road or off-pavement riding, unless of course you own a large tract of land in the Highlands, so I'll have to make do with these narrow little paved tracks. After spending a few days in and around Edinburgh, it felt really good to get out into the countryside. In case it wasn't obvious, I'm really not much of a city person, but I never grow weary of places like this. All over Scotland, and probably the rest of the UK too, are these wonderful old stone bridges that are now being used for car, truck, and motorcycle traffic. Unfortunately, Scotland also has speed cameras, but a speed limit of 60 miles per hour everywhere but towns and a relatively low displacement motorcycle mean this is not such a worry on this trip. The real concern is having enough room to pass cars on these narrow little roads. Now this is starting to feel like the Highlands. Big, treeless hills with beautiful valleys in between. This road, believe it or not, is labeled as an A road, which means it's a major connector between towns, and that there will be trucks and buses on it, no matter how small it seems. This wasn't on the route, but it was a beautiful bypass to the main road into Dunkeld. And look, another old bridge. And another, across the River Tay into the village centre. Dunkeld has had a settlement here since 730 AD, though nearly everything still standing today is from 1869 and later. I had a delicious sausage roll from the Erin Bakery and was on my way again. Back onto the single-lane roads again. These roads work because it is mandatory to let faster traffic by. The speed limit is 60 after all. This road winds its way along the south side of the beautiful Loch Tummel. And here is the hydroelectric station that was built in the 1930s. Just down the road is a double arch bridge built in 1730. This bridge and many others were built by Major General George Wade. In the 1720s, he was tasked with solving the Highland problem, a delightful euphemism for quelling any possible Jacobite insurrection. His solution was to connect the fortresses throughout the Highlands with well-built roads so troops and supplies could be moved easily. This road is called General Wade Military Road, and apart from the tarmac, hasn't changed much since the 18th century. It's pretty cool to travel through Scotland this way. Other parts of these roads were upgraded quite a bit more. Okay guys, it's official. The Loch Ness Monster has welcomed us to the Highlands. I got off of the A9 as quickly as I could and rode through heather and fields on what is totally a 2-lane road. I stopped for a quick walk and stretch at Paddock Falls. It was nice to get off the bike for a few minutes to wander around the moss and tall trees. Don't worry, the dash on this Himalayan works just fine. There is either some sort of polarizer or rolling shutter effect happening here. Look at that little gatehouse. Pretty cool. That is the gatehouse for some 19th century manor that sits on the other side of the lake, and you can stay there for £1,200 a week in the summer. I arrived at my accommodations for the evening in Roy Bridge, had a meal at the pub across the street, and went for a walk in the woods. I even found some very enticing bright red mushrooms. I've found my glamping pod for the evening, and I'm gonna sit back and read a book and go to sleep. Good morning from Roy Bridge. Check out my little glamping pod. I know, I couldn't be bothered to bring all the camping stuff across the ocean, but this'll do for now, and headed off to the Isle of Skye this morning. I packed up the bike and was on the road at the crack of 8:30. The rows of camper vans were not in the description for the pod, but it was a nice quiet night. That's the pub where I had a beer and hot and cold smoked Scottish salmon last night. Look at the thin layer of clouds sitting about halfway up the mountains. Those mountains are on the other side of Loch Lochy, which feels like the equivalent of Lakey Lake. Brought to you by the Department of Redundancy Department. Being an engine nerd, I couldn't help but stop at Laggen Lock. And as luck would have it, a long canal cruise boat was just about to pass through. The Caledonian Canal here allows boats to pass from the sea in Inverness all the way to the saltwater loch in Fort William. As with many canals, by the time this was finished in 1822, the need for it had been diminished. Large iron-hulled steamships had been invented, and with Napoleon defeated in 1815, there was no longer a significant threat to shipping. Having had my fill of old technology, I continued north under a ceiling of clouds, and past the arch nemesis of fun on narrow roads, the camper van. And before long, I was in those clouds. These soon faded away to reveal views of the very blue Loch Lomond. A little farther up the road is Loch Cluany. Honestly, I'm having a hell of a time with these Scottish names, so if I botch them, please correct me. It is such a treat to ride through here in the warm September sunshine. The Highlands are really quite something, aren't they? It is nice to be off the A-roads again. I always try to make way for the local truck and van drivers. They weigh a lot more, but they have a job to do, and I'm just wandering around for fun. This little road hugs the salty Loch Duich before climbing up Radigan Pass, another 18th century military road. There was a lovely view of the loch that I probably should have stopped at, but I was nonsensically rushing to get to the Isle of Skye. I did stop on the other side of the pass, but the view wasn't quite as nice. A little bit later in the trip, I realized that there are 2 Iron Age stone buildings not too far from here. I'll need to go find them the next time I'm in Scotland, but don't miss them if you venture this way. I've been enjoying the Scottish pictograph road signs so much. I think I'll have to make a t-shirt with all of the signs I saw. So, why did I come this way? Well, there are 3 ways to get onto the Isle of Skye. The bridge at Kyle of Loch Alsh, the large commercial ferry from Mallaig to Armadale, and this, the original ferry crossing that has been in use for the last 400 years. I stopped for a coffee and meat pie while I watched the ferry in action. This is the MV Glenachulish, the last hand-operated turntable ferry in the world. Once the cars are loaded, the operators spin them around so they are facing forward when they reach the other bank. This turntable and long ramp into the sea allow the ferry to work at any time during the large tidal swing, where the high tide can be up to 5 meters above low tide. All that water flowing isn't a river, it's the tide going out to sea. And now it's my turn. I will try very hard not to end up like the car on the sign. This may very well be the stubbiest lighthouse I've ever seen. And onto one of the coolest ferries I've ever been on. The competition is fierce, with a bamboo human-powered ferry in northern Vietnam and a paddle wheel ferry across the Susquehanna River also vying for the top spot. There is a circular rail on the deck of the ship that supports the turntable, which can hold up to 6 cars and be spun around by 1 or 2 people. There are no motors or hydraulics. Adding to the show are a couple ferry dogs who look like they are having the time of their life helping out with the rigging.
One way?
Yes.
£10, please. Card. It's good. Thank you.
Thank you. And if you can't pay, they lower the ramps and make you walk the plank. Arr!
Take all the seals over there.
Oh. Oh, wow. I apologize for what you're about to see, but I couldn't help myself. Thank you. Here's one reason why motorcycle touring is so great in Scotland. Even when a passing point doesn't present itself, you can still get past those pesky cars. And these single-lane roads are all over the west coast of Scotland, even on some A roads, so there is no avoiding them. Not that you would want to, they're great fun. Just arrived on Skye on the super cool turntable ferry, and oh my god, look at the views. This place is just as special as I remember, and holy shit, the weather couldn't be any better. It's sunny and warm. My wet weather gear that was supposed to save me in Scotland, well, a little warm right now, but I think we'll make do. What the? Oh my god. Blind crests on single-lane roads are quite exciting, apparently. Also, this road is superb. If only I had it to myself. Ah, that's more like it. As I approach the town of Broadford, some of Skye's striking mountains come into view. The south of the island is home to a high concentration of Munros, that is, mountains over 3,000 feet tall, named for Sir Hugh Munro, who compiled a list of such mountains in 1891. You can see the beginning of the Coolin Hills that are home to 12 Munros, behind the cow and caravan traffic jam. The leftmost peak is called Laggen, and I fondly remember picking my way through the scree field to get to the top of it 9 years ago. The view from the top was certainly worth the trouble. You really have to watch out for these fluffy white things. They have a mind of their own. 14 miles down this dead-end road is the old fishing and crofting village of Elgol. This is where I stayed on my previous trip to Skye, but I couldn't find any accommodations here this time. I had a little while before I could check in at the one reasonably priced place I could find on the island, so I headed to the other side of this peninsula to go for a little walk. After a short time of searching for a suitable spot to park the bike, I found a little gravel patch and ditched my riding gear. A grassy field gave way to a rocky gully that took me down to the beach, which was covered in giant, pockmarked boulders. Oh, well, we have to go through there. Honestly, these moto boots are better than my sneakers for hiking, but maybe that'll work. This is a walk that only really works within an hour or two of low tide, unless you have a boat. Since the tide changes over 4 meters around here, all of this will be underwater later today. What a cool place. This is Spar Cave. Oh, and it's drippy. Now I need a light. This cave was a popular tourist destination in the 1800s, and that ruined old wall back there was built to prevent people from visiting without a guide, but it was unable to deter the more adventurous sightseers, including Sir Walter Scott. Let's clear a little hill here. That's quite grippy. It's all calcium. Super cool. Look at this. It's like coral. There's pretty little water streams coming down. It's awfully hard to capture on camera, but this flowstone is really steep and it feels like it is 45 degrees. The soaking wet rock makes everything look slippery, but the calcium crystals are quite sharp and provide plenty of traction. Bubbles. Getting dripped on. Oh my god. Look at this place. Wow, this is quite something. Now, how do I get down this thing? Looks super sketchy, but there's so much grip. There's so much grip. There's that jellyfish. Man. What a world we live in. Oh, these little nubbies are so sharp. Look at that. So fucking cool. Let's play the game. Where's the fighter jet? That's a bird. That's enough spelunking for now. Time to head back along the winding road toward Elgol. Across the loch is the Black Coolin, a striking and formidable mountain range rising out of the sea. I'm heading down to the rocky beach to get a better look at these stunning monuments. You can hire a boat to drop you off at the base of the mountains, or go for a wildlife cruise. Which is most likely what these people are doing. I had a lovely little walk along the beach here and got to bask in the glorious September sun. This is such a nice, tranquil part of Skye. There are even a couple little cottages right on the water. Something tells me that this won't be the last time I visit this part of Skye, but it's time to go find some food in the place I booked to stay for the next 3 nights. The last time I was on a bike in Scotland, I did 1,200 miles in 4 days, which was fun, but I really wanted more time to wander around and stop if I see something interesting. Like a busload of old men in kilts, for instance. This little sign here is what makes all of these single-lane roads work. If people didn't let you by, motorcycling would not be nearly as fun here. Which would be a real shame, because these roads are pretty magnificent. Since it was still the second day of the trip, the sheep roaming everywhere were still a novelty. Man, I would have been on the brakes so hard if I were in that car. It seems like a pretty nice day to be a sheep on the Isle of Skye. I found a giant pile of fish and chips right on the water in Broadford. So here's my home base for the next couple days. The yurt has a wood stove and comfy bed, and there's a shared kitchen and some composting toilets. Not 4-star luxury accommodations for sure, but certainly clean and cozy enough. If you're still here, thanks for coming along. And stay tuned for more wandering around the west coast of Scotland.